स्वागतं सर्वेषां। तन्मध्ये योजितवन्तः दूरात् अस्माकं कार्यालये डॉक्टर चांदकिरण सलूजा, विजया भगिनी, अपि च प्रोफेसर प्रशांत, अपि च अस्माकं सर्वे कार्यकर्तारः बहिस्तादपि बहवः योजितवन्तः। सेंट्रल संस्कृत यूनिवर्सिटी तः नितिन जी, अपि च रश्मि सेठी जी, सर्वेषां कृते एकेन पदेन स्वागतम् उक्त्वा वयं प्रथमं प्रार्थना श्लोकम् उक्त्वा प्रार्थनया कार्यक्रमस्य आरम्भं कुर्मः। प्रार्थना निमित्तम् अहं गानमूर्ति महोदयं निवेदयामि। भवान् अत्र आगच्छतु। आम् आम्।
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रान्विता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा पूजिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापः।
धन्यवादः। वयं साक्षात् कार्यक्रमे प्रविशामः। ततः पूर्वं कार्यक्रमस्य स्वरूपम् एवं भवति। आरम्भे डॉक्टर सलूजा अत्र किञ्चित् अस्य इंट्रोडक्शन् आमुखरूपेण किञ्चित् प्रथमं वदिष्यन्ति। अनन्तरं साक्षात् विजया भगिन्याः यत् पुस्तकं तैः विरचितं इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन द्वारा प्रकाशितं हू इज रेजिंग युवर चिल्ड्रन, एत अस्य हिंदी पुस्तकमपि आगतं वर्तते। तस्य टाइटल अस्ति बच्चे आपके संस्कार किसके इति। एतत् महत्वपूर्णं पुस्तकं वर्तते। तस्मिन् विषये अद्य किञ्चित् लघुरूपेण चर्चा भवति। अस्माकं एतत् निवेदनं स्वीकृत्य आगतवती विजया भगिन्याः कृते आरम्भे एव अहं मम धन्यवादान् पूर्वमेव सूचयित्वा कार्यक्रमे डॉक्टर चांदकिरण सलूजा महोदयं निवेदयामि। सः किञ्चित् आरम्भिक भाषणं कुर्वन्तु।
सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारः, सुस्वागतम्। जैसा कि बताया है माननीय लक्ष्मी जी ने, यह एक बहुत ही विशिष्ट कार्यक्रम है। कोऽपि विशिष्टः कार्यक्रमः एषः। इट्स वेरी स्पेशल। जो दिखाई देता है वो सत्य नहीं है, ये प्राचीन भारतीय उक्ति से हम परिचित हैं। यही कारण है कि तैत्तिरीय ईशोपनिषद में बहुत ही सुंदर रूप से वो मंत्र कहिए या श्लोक आया है, हिरण्मयेन पात्रेण सत्यस्यापि हितमुखम तत्त्वं पूषण अपावृणु सत्य धर्म दृष्टि। सत्य है क्या? इस सत्य की जब मैं चर्चा कर रहा हूं तो यह केवल एक कथन नहीं है, बल्कि एक बहुत गहरा भाव है जो आप इस पुस्तक के मुख पृष्ठ को देखकर पहचानने का प्रयास कीजिए। यह महापुराण भागवत पुराण का संकेतात्मक चिन्ह है। अघासुर असुर की कथा का यह चित्र है। किस प्रकार से उसने बच्चों को बहलाकर अपने वश में किया हुआ है। और पुस्तक का शीर्षक जब आता है हु इज रेजिंग योर चिल्ड्रन, लेकिन इसका उत्तर प्रश्न के रूप में ही हिंदी संस्करण में आ जाता है। यानी क्या है वह, बच्चे आपके, संस्कार किसके। हु इज रेजिंग योर चिल्ड्रन का अर्थ इस संकेत में लेना चाहिए कि बच्चे तो हमारे आसपास, हमारे बच्चे खेल रहे हैं, लेकिन उन्हें उनका पालन पोषण कौन कर रहा है, और इसलिए कहा संस्कार किसके। यदि मैं भारतीय परंपरा को देखता हूं तो संस्कार शब्द सामान्य शब्द नहीं है। ऋग्वेद में इसका उपयोग हुआ संस्कृत शब्द की दृष्टि से। संस्कृत और संस्कार दोनों आसपास बैठते हैं। एक प्रक्रिया ले लेता है, दूसरा परिणाम ले लेता है। कभी जो प्रक्रिया थी वो परिणाम ले लेता है और दूसरा संज्ञा के रूप में आ जाता है। शतपथ ब्राह्मण में बहुत ही सुंदर रूप से उसकी व्याख्या की गई है और वहां एक पवित्रीकरण के प्रश्न को उठाया गया है जो बाद में षोडश संस्कार के रूप में आया है। हम किस प्रकार से अपनी संस्कृति को भूले हैं। प्रश्न संस्कृति को भूलने का नहीं, अद्भुत यह है कि भारत की संस्कृति वस्तुतः विश्व की संस्कृति है। बच्चों का पालन पोषण कैसे किया जाना चाहिए, उस रूप में यह पुस्तक अपने आप में अद्भुत पुस्तक है। और मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूं माननीय राजीव मल्होत्रा जी को, जिनका एक बहुत बड़ा नाम संस्कृत के उत्थान की दृष्टि से है, और विजया जी को, विजया विश्वनाथन जी को। और मुझे ध्यान आता है कि कुछ वर्ष पहले चेन्नई में जब हम जाते थे तो बार बार विजया जी का नाम आता था। मैं मिला तो कभी नहीं था, मिला तो आज ही हूं कि जिस घर में हमारा वास होता था अथवा जहां संस्कृत भारती का कार्यालय चलता था वो एक बहुत बड़ा अपार्टमेंट था और उसी में जो एक घर था, कहते हैं विजया भगिनी का है। इदम ग्रहम विजया भगिन्या तो मम मनसि प्रश्न भवति स्म का विजया भगिनी अद्य हम दर्शनम कृतवान। तो मुझे लगता है कि इस पुस्तक के लेखन में जुड़कर उन्होंने भारतीयता को जिस प्रकार से विजय पथ पर ले जाने का प्रयास किया वो अपने आप में एक अद्भुत हो सकता है। अपनी वाणी से ही ये सारी बातें कहेंगी कि पुस्तक के पीछे क्या भावना रही, मैं बातों का खुलासा नहीं करूंगा, वे स्वयं इस बात को बताएंगी और एक प्रश्न हमारे सामने खड़ा भी करेंगी, आखिर हमें अपने बच्चों का पालन पोषण कैसे करना है। उस प्रश्न में ही बहुत सारे उत्तर भी छिपे हुए हैं। इन्हीं बातों के साथ मैं आप सबका स्वागत करता हूं और स्वागत करते हुए प्रार्थना करूंगा विजया जी से कि वे अपने मन की बात हमारे समक्ष रखें। साक्षात
गिरिधरराव महोदय अपि आगतवान्, भाषासमितिमध्ये सः कार्यं करोति। स्वागतं विजया।
So I will talk in English, try and do Hindi in between because the anglicized education I have had, I'm not proud of it, but that's the best way to communicate these things. And it has an advantage because we can understand the vichardhara of Westerners. So that's how in my exposure to English and English philosophy, Western philosophy, culture, all of that can be used to contribute to our Sabhyata, if you will. So this book, as was mentioned. By the way, I'm the one that actually named the book, although my Hindi is poor, but to get the tattva of what we're talking about. So I will take credit for this much Hindi. And as it was told, this is the Aghasura, story from the Bhagavata Purana. Now, the book is about breaking India. It is just not about your children. It is not about India's children. It is about using children को breaking India force कैसे बनाएंगे. So Rajiv Malhotra ने Breaking India 1.0 लिखा था, and उसमें Christian missionaries का plan strategy क्या था, India को Dalit fault lines, Hindu Muslim fault lines, Dalit fault lines. How do you get all that into India, and how do you break India, make it divisive? Now, so that was from the gram level, from the village level. You go to remote rural areas, mass conversions, and then they will try to dismantle society. Breaking India 2.0, as this book is called, Breaking India 2.0, is Snakes in the Ganga. This was actually around 1500 pages. We brought it down to 800 pages. This is actually an 800-page book. I mean, there are 2 books here, but actually an 800-page book, but we used fine paper and high quality printing so that it looks thin. And we cut out a lot of it when we published that, because we are making very big claims and naming names. As you know, Rajiv ji will not just say, this is sort of not good. He will straight away say this XYZ is bad, and these are the people in charge, and they should be taken, taken to task. So when we finished this book, we gave it to a very reputed publisher who was very eager to publish Rajiv ji's book. But he started, because here we had named Harvard and Mahindras and who all, the Reliance, Ambani's, everybody who's funding. On one side, they do good work. We are not saying no. Swachh Bharat ke liye, Shauchalaya, they nirman karte hain. All of that they do. We're not taking that away. But we have a problem with anything that is civilizationally damaging. So the editor, along with his lawyer, started reading the first 10, 15 pages, and he started marking up. Oh, you cannot name Harvard, department and all. And then I told Rajiv at that point, he has no idea what is in the rest of the 750 pages. He read the first 50 pages and said, "Ye nikalna chahiye, Mahindra Center ko, you should not name in Harvard. Oh, Tata ko, you should not name." So immediately as he was reading, we started looking for another publisher, because we knew that it would never pass through their scrutiny. So, but it was good to see what the lawyers had objections with, and so we, sort of toned down some things and made sure we still conveyed those messages, but in a slightly toned down way, and we got it published. So this is Snakes in the Ganga. So Snakes in the Ganga is Breaking India 2.0 because it talks about how the rich billionaires, the elites of India, they are all funding places like Harvard, producing research to break India. And this comes into Ashoka University, the Tukde gang of JNU, it all trickles down to all those levels. Now, unfortunately, even the government sends its bureaucrats to Harvard for training. It's taxpayer money. All of you pay taxes. Your taxpayer money is going to fund the bureaucrats, right, to Harvard to get this kind of leftist education to break India. So our own bureaucrats are being trained by elite Western universities to have this kind of drishti, the shaping a worldview against India. So this is Breaking India. So Breaking India 1.0 was grassroots. Breaking India 2.0 is from top down. This is Breaking India 3.0, where we call it Breaking India from inside out. Okay. So the next generation, you have children, you train them in a particular, with certain drishtikon, certain mindset, then they will become activists and they'll do the job automatically. You don't need Western money, NGOs, all of that. Apne aap, we can do self-destruction. So this is, that is why this is the future. The next generation is being captured by, again, all your taxpayer money by the government, systematically by the government. So again, Rajiv ji and I, we don't take political positions of this or that. We just say if something is wrong, we want to right it. It's not anything personal against anyone. So we are doing a civilizational audit, right, that nobody's done. So you're running Samskrit Promotion Foundation. It's good to get somebody from the outside and say, are you doing civilization, or are you doing something against the civilization? So like every company has a chartered accountant or a Ernst & Young coming in to do an audit, accounting audit. Okay, has all the goods been stolen, taken? Do you have inventory that is dead and lying waste and not being used? What's going on? So this is a civilizational audit for Bharat. All these things. Now, getting to the subject matter, what is going on? The United Nations has something called Sustainable Development Goals. All of you are very familiar. So SDGs, environmentalism, carbon footprint, all of this. So these are all. Where is all this coming from? Right? It's not like somebody needs to teach us. I think he can give with all his knowledge on Mahodaya can give us a good series of lectures on environmentalism, on sustainability based on Shastra. We don't need outside Gyan per se. If they will listen to people like this, then we would not need. But anyway, so the Sustainable Development Goals are something that all countries, 194 countries, signed up for, the United Nations. And they said, but then there are ways in the language that you can make it culturally appropriate. China has signed up for Sustainable Development Goals. First it was Millennium Goals, and then it became Sustainable Development Goals. China signed up and said, we'll do it according to our civilizational values. You want to turn? I think it's hot. You can turn on a fan or something. Yeah. So, but India, of course, took the Western model of sustainability. Now, the main thing, let's focus only on education. Right? Now, we all are worried about why is NCRT book like this? Why is Bhasha? We don't have textbooks in our Bhasha. We don't have teacher training in our Bhasha. Sanskrit is not being taught properly. Even now, IKS is taught at college level. I mean, you can, but IKS should start in, you can't, without Vyakaranam and all of Tarkashas, you can't get, by the time you're 18, the bus has sailed for, the ship has sailed for Sanskrit. You can maybe get a translation and say, okay, good, I mean, interesting, and move on for 3 credits. But that's not where you integrate IKS, right? And IKS is a silo. It's not integrated into the system. Now, looking at all this research, my feeling is that the NEP was designed, was implemented to fit into the Sustainable Development Agenda. It had nothing to do with bringing our Bhasha back, bringing Sanskritam back. This is like just giving you a Ram temple. So you're like amazed with your mouth open that kuch hua, Ram Lala ko. But meanwhile, we are selling the country on the other side. It's a distraction. So this is just a personal opinion of mine, because when I look at how the NEP is designed with the words, it is very clear to me that it is designed to bring in the Sustainable Development Goals into education. Yeah. So what are the new subjects that are coming in through this because of the Sustainable Development Goals? So if you go to the Niti Aayog site, Niti Aayog has a fancy dashboard. They have in fact a whole department for statistics to collect data at the state level. And they all have to report to the Niti Aayog. And then Niti Aayog then reports to the UNESCO. There's a big boss outside the country. And that's whom they're reporting to. They're not reporting to y'all. Although you're the citizens and you're the taxpayer, nobody's reporting to you. Yeah, because these goals are set by outsiders and we are following. This is a new way of colonization of the country. So this is a new kind of a colonization of the country. Now, focusing on education. So focusing on education. Now, education is not just a silo when you look at Sustainable Development Goals, because along with education is healthcare and law. So these 3, we will look at them a little later. But keep in mind, it's just not education. There are very surreptitious ways of getting into the system. Now, there are 4 new subjects coming. Of course, we don't have time for Sanskrit. We don't have time for Matrubhasha because they'll say the curriculum doesn't allow, teachers can't train, the day is already full. But we have time for 4 new subjects getting into the system. Right? Now, the 4 new subjects are, one is comprehensive sexuality education. Yeah. Now, you might say all of you are old, and so what's there? We should all learn about sex. And I'm not one of those prudish moms. I have 2 boys, and I have taught them sex education. So I'm not worried about what is, I'm shy. I don't feel like a shy person there. So so there's something called comprehensive sexuality education that's come into the curriculum. Then there's something called global citizenship education. And our people just say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Of course, you'll say, of course, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And the Sanskrit, the people who are into civilizational sort of studies, all they say, yeah, of course, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, sure, you have my thumbs up. But the devil is always in the details. There's Shabdon ka khel, The Marxists are masters at this, giving you something that sounds nice, but inside is a huge poison. It is like the Agasura, right? Nice, Agasuras came, had all crystals. The children were like, crystals, light, color, and they go in. That's how Marxist terms are. So global citizenship, so comprehensive sexuality education, global citizenship education. The third is a social emotional learning. Who does not want to be socially and emotionally balanced, right? So social emotional learning, acha sounding words, right? So, and of course, fourth is the environmental education. Everybody is after. Of course, you'll say Yamuna needs to be cleaned up. This thing, it's not that. Even LGBTQ issues in Snakes in the Ganga, we talk about how Godrej, right? Godrej company, they have this Godrej Labs where the environment, so under environmental education and environmental activism, you have the Kashmir issue, Ghus Gaya, that you have Kashmir separatists that are called, so suddenly, kya environmental, and then, how did Kashmir come in there? And then there is LGBTQ, and if you are a traditional hijra, a trans person with, who does traditional dance, whatever, those people get cancelled. They don't want traditional trans people. They want only a certain kind of queer person in that forum. So which has Western ideas of the LGBTQ. So comprehensive sexuality education, social emotional learning, and global citizenship education, and environmental education. We'll talk about this briefly. Yeah. Now, comprehensive sexuality education is the worst thing. So what makes the regular sex education that we all had? What makes it vyapak, comprehensive? Yeah. Some achanak how sex education needs to become vyapak sex education, comprehensive, not sex, sexuality education. So sex education versus sexuality education mein kya antar hai? Again, Marxist ideas. So if you just read a paper and say sexuality, I sort of understand. That isn't enough. So you need to understand what makes sexuality education different from sex education. And what makes it comprehensive. So if you start reading, we've done the work for you of going through WHO. So this thing on who, right? Who is educating your kid? Is WHO, there's a pun in the word, is WHO, World Health Organization also, right? So who is, because we automatically think the World Bank is prestigious, UNESCO prestigious, World Health Organization, usne vaccine lagao, we say, yeah, of course, WHO has certified, therefore we have to vaccinate ourselves. WHO, but you have to see who is funding all these people. What is their agenda? Because all these organizations, I think that they had a time that, in which they were very useful in certain things, in bringing global peace and taking care of war zones and providing aid and things like that. But I think that time is over. And one needs to ask whether we really need to be part of all these organizations. Trump, for America's part, has not done that. This time, as he came in, America has woken up. So they said no. So Trump has done a lot of good things for America. I know we don't like him, but for America, he's done a lot of good things. He's got rid of all these woke ideas. He's cut his funding for all these UNESCO, World Health Organization, all that, because their children are getting spoiled. But we have just signed our total sovereignty. We've just given it to. In fact, we had a pandemic treaty that was signed, global pandemic treaty for the future pandemic, signed last July. India, no issues on it. Kidhar lagana, it's okay, Hastaksha, I'll just do it. Tell me. Whereas America did not sign, because many states in America said we are not signing. And what did the pandemic treaty say? Future pandemic may your country will give up all its sovereignty. They won't make any health policy. WHO will make all the policies for you. UN, United Nations will make the point. You will just implement it if it's a global. And America said no. And that's why Ayurveda and all of that were not allowed even during the first pandemic. You're not even allowed to talk. I know so many Ayurvedic physicians who had great results, but were not allowed to talk about it, because if they talk, their licenses would go off. Because these directives are coming from outside. And this time we've signed up. The future next pandemic, WHO, our doctors our health experts have no say in how we manage our country, right? And so this is the kind of problem we're having. Now, sex education quickly. So what makes sex education comprehensive? Sexuality education. The first thing is, it's a rights-based education. Sexual right is a fundamental right. So if you go back into the UN documents, or United Nations, there are all these organizations for human rights and for legal rights and human rights and things like that. There are all these organizations. What they do is they have come up with rules where they've said sexual rights is a fundamental human right. So you will say, what is there? Big deal. Yeah, what is there? Now, when you make something a human right, then you as a parent have no say in the matter, right? Because it's a fundamental. A 5-year-old has sexual rights now. A 5-year-old has a sexual right, right? So that's what they're trying to bring in. So, and they're training the children that sexual right is a fundamental right, and you should stand for it, even if your parents say no. It's such a fundamental right that you can exercise it, and they're trying to bring that in. I'll talk about how some of the legal things have happened in India, and it's only going to get worse. So sexual rights have, that's how the United Nations looks at it, that human rights, sexual right is a fundamental human right. The other side of it, they're so clever, it's just amazing. I wish we had such clever people on our side, to protect. Because we just don't think that way. We just don't think in these ways. The second part of comprehensive sexuality education is it's a pleasure-based sex education. So they say all these old people, they're always saying, oh, don't get pressure. It's always risky to get involved in sexual activity. You'll get sexually transmitted diseases. There's a risk of pregnancy, and then if you have a child, say, and then you can't study. It's not women's empowerment. Women will be bogged down because of getting into children. So you have to have a pleasure-based. So they act. This what Indriya Nigraha is out the window, right? In fact, they actively tell little children to explore their sexuality, right? And this exploration also includes this performative. So according to queer theory, the whole thing that you're a male and you're a female is a performative. I'm acting. So today I've gotten up in the morning and I'm performing being a woman, and I do it so naturally because my mother, my grandmother have all told me this is how you have to be a woman. You wear a sari, you wear some earring, you can't go without bangles. So they've told me so many times that this is how it should be performed, that in my sleep also I automatically make sure I go with earrings, I wear one sari, and I perform being a woman, right? That I learn to keep my legs closed and I sit. I don't sit like a man, spreading his legs. So I'm performing being a woman. Similarly, you're performing being a man if you're a male. So they say this gender, that's why the gender and sex have been split up. And Ashoka University has a whole department teaching young people this, gender and sexuality studies. So to teach them that, okay, so we are all performing gender, and gender is performative, and therefore today Vijaya can just say, you know what, halfway through this thing, I don't want to be a woman, and I just feel like being a man. So I spread my legs, I sit like this, and now I'm performing being man. And so when you tell this to young children who during adolescence are very uncomfortable with their bodies, both young boys and girls are very uncomfortable with how their body changes. Uh, so what they tell them is, maybe you're uncomfortable, in your and young girls would tend to, slouch as they get their, breast development, all of that. And boys with facial hair are like awkward. So this awkward stage they will tell you, you know what, the problem you're awkward is deep down you're not the sex that your mother and father are telling you that you are. Now, this ideology has come into AIMS. It's coming into the because through medicine, it comes into the Indian Association of Pediatrics. So you can go into your pediatrician and your child, you can, they can do that. And in the US, they indoctrinate. So it's social, engineering of children at a very young age. There are Indian families whose so we've written about this little girl, Tia, I think her name is, changed, in Oregon, where it's a ordinary Hindu family, second standard child, maybe 8 years old, goes to school. She's become Felix. So socially, she has changed. Her name has changed, and the teacher gives her some different clothes, boys' clothes to wear. Only her parents don't know. The entire class knows she's Felix. The other parents know. So one of the Christian parents said, American parents said, I'm not comfortable with this because we all know, they all go for a picnic, and Tia's mother also comes. Everybody knows she's Felix, but only Tia's mother doesn't know she's Felix. And this poor lady has also come to be a chaperone. And she said, I don't feel correct because if this happened to my child, I want to know. Good, bad, or ugly, you want to know what happens to your child. And so it just so happens that this young girl said she wore some Indian dress and it was poking her. You know how Indian dresses sometimes, all the lehenga and all that, it pokes you. And so she just said, oh, I was wearing some Indian clothes and it was poking me. And the teacher said, well, guess what? You're not a girl. And maybe you should try being a boy and maybe see if you are more comfortable with that. And so everybody knew. They tried to transition her, and then they moved to a different school, and the same teacher created secret email IDs for that child and started communicating, saying, if your parents are not allowing you, don't worry, I'm here for you. Yeah, and we can transition. And so within 3 months, they changed 2 states, and then they moved back to Bharat. So these are happening. These are real things happening to us. It's not okay. So what, in Niti Aayog does something, NEP does something. Everything, if we leave, because we have been a society that has just left it. Okay, hum do, hamare parivar okay, then just rest can go to hell, And this is all coming back because we have not taken an active step in working for a society that will, for a larger cause. So anyway, so the second part of, like I said, so one is rights based. The second is going after desires. Now, going after desires in Jharkhand for 14 years, the tribal children of Jharkhand. So how it works is they look for a very brushed state government, very corrupt state government. And so usme ghuske, so you have a lot of our IAS officers have, they finish their term, they know how the government machinery works. So after that, they get their retirement and then they work for a fancy NGO. And they tell you, this is the guy you can bribe, this is the guy this is the program you can get in. So Jharkhand is a great example of how the tribals of Jharkhand have been given this, UNESCO has done this, whole sex education. So no reading, no writing, no mathematics. In that time, right, the reading and mathematics, right, literacy and numeracy has come down steadily since 2009, when these programs have started coming in. They have used the AIDS program for money. So that's how it enters the Ministry of Health. You use the AIDS program and take that money to teach comprehensive sexuality education. Now, in their reports, the UNESCO reports, this is Jharkhand is like a case study. And they say things like, so one of the big things that the WHO, the sexuality education is about, when you say desire-based, they will, and I'll give you some graphic examples. They teach children, I mean, literally teach children to masturbate, little children to masturbate, because that's how you learn about your body and pleasure and what you need to seek. Yeah. And I don't want to be sitting here talking about masturbation to this crowd, but we all need to know. If your children are learning about it, you need to know about it. So and some of the teachers in Jharkhand say, we just don't want to deal with this. Do you want to do? Now, the Christian schools in Jharkhand said, no, thank you. Because, of course, the right to education is only for Hindu schools and government schools. So the Christian schools, it was also in the note in the UNESCO document saying the Christian school said, we don't want comprehensive sexuality education for our children, right? And some of the teachers said, we can't teach it, or didn't teach it properly, or just sort of did it and just say whatever and moved on, right? So your literacy and numeracy is coming down. You're teaching young children to masturbate and explore their sexuality. Recently, you had Aniruddha Acharya or Premanandji Maharaj. Some bayan they gave on sthiti of Samaj, with the live-in relationships and sexual promiscuity of young girls, and said, what is going on. The media made big controversy, hua tha. Aise kaise, they can say, because this is about women's empowerment, we can do whatever we want. But you have to understand, this is only going to get worse. Where is all this coming? Because we are systematically educating our children on this, on how to be more promiscuous, how to go after your sexual desires. The WHO book on AIDS, HIV positive young people. So again, young people, if you read, you need to go and look. Young people mane kya? Yeah. So young people is anyone above 10 years. A 10-year-old child is a young person. So everything is a definition. You can't just say, I know what young is, I know what people is. Young people is not a samasa. It's not like that. It's a technical word. So they go and then they say, the young person, they say, if you are an HIV positive young person, this is the advice of the WHO to HIV people, young children, right? They say, you don't have to necessarily tell your partner that you're HIV positive. It's okay. Don't feel obligated to that, because you have to pursue your pleasure. So you don't have to. You want to, you do it, but you don't have to. And we suggest some alternate ways of getting equal pleasure with pictures, right? Of how to engage in sex. It's like a manual on sex. So we tell you how to do it, where you can get equal or even more pleasure, these alternate forms. So these are all books with pictures. So that is why Trump banned these organizations, because in the US it's even more. That you have books in the school library with all these how-to books. It's pornography. So there is a law of pornography in all countries where you cannot distribute material like this because it's considered pornography. But if it is under education, or there's obscenity laws, but if it's for education, then it can be done. So this pornographic material, it doesn't come under obscenity laws, so it can be easily distributed as education and research. Again, legal side you have to look at. It's not that simple, right? So Jharkhand has been totally messed up. It's a case study. Looking at Jharkhand, they look at Africa. They want to spoil every poor country there is in the world by saying, I'll give you funding. Hewlett Packard Foundation, which is an American foundation, Hewlett Packard, the printer company, they have a huge foundation. HP, of course, this computer is also, Yantra is also from HP. Now, HP in America, they have a HP foundation, and they fund STEM. Best engineers, they give scholarships to go to college, physics, latest in, any of these AI, all these things, robotics. That's where the funding goes. In Africa and India, it's sex education. So that alone should give you, why can't they also fund robotics and all of that over here? Why, why sex? Is that like the real need for Bharat? Is sex education? So essentially that. So and the third, so one is pleasure, the other is right. Third is confusion. The entire comprehensive sexuality education is to confuse you about gender. I told you, you can be a morning, you can be a girl. So in the name of women's empowerment and equal rights, they say, and transgender acceptance and tolerance of alternate lifestyle, queer, and all these things, and you starting to use all these he, him, all these pronouns. They make you use all of that in the name of tolerance, so that they confuse the child. Like I gave you the example of the child, Indian child in America. That's also coming here. So these are the three parts of of the sex education that that they're bringing in. And Jharkhand is a great example. It's come everywhere. Now the two uh, so they need training. There are two important aspects of what happens during. So how come it comes in? The Lok Sabha just put out something, just a three-liner: comprehensive sexuality education. This education, CSE will be implemented in all schools. Boom, done. Nobody knows what a CSE. It just got passed, just among the 100 things. Nobody even bothered, right? It got passed. Now the Tatas, they fund something called. Before I talk about that. Now, how do you teach this? So I gave the example of Jharkhand. Even the regular teachers who are sort of guardrails, gatekeepers of society in some ways, don't want to talk about it. And the parents, of course, don't want to do it. So how do you manage that? NGOs, but NGOs still have somebody to teach. So even if I tell you, okay, come, I'll give you, Samskrit Promotion Foundation is giving you X, I'll pay you 5X. Come and work with me. He's a little uncomfortable saying, do I want to go teach little children about masturbation? I don't know if I want to do that. It's awkward. We're not built that way. So they have started something called peer education. So they go to these villages and they take an 18-year-old. They train them. They'd have nothing, remote village somewhere, Rajasthan, somewhere. Udan is the name of the project in Jharkhand and Rajasthan. Udan is big. All states, first they said no, and then now all states have adopted Udan. So they take young people and they train them. And they get outside money and they say for women's empowerment, so that if they get pregnant too early, that it's a problem for their health risk because of pregnancy, all of that. So they take these young people, they train them. And so the whole thing is done by peer education. So your sex education is based on gyan that you get from a sahapati of sorts, right? And they are trained. And these people are in remote villages, so 25,000-30,000 go a long way, and just to go and talk about sex. Right? So that is one thing that Tatas and all are doing. Now, HCL, on the other hand, Shiv Nadar's group, what they do is they have all these computing platforms. So they work with the government. In fact, one of the founders, ex-founders of HCL, but was not quite related to HCL right now, but he's still got those connections, I'm sure. And he's an advisor to the Niti Aayog for all this, for education. We have lots of maps in this, maps like lots of these graphs we have. Yeah, I have this one, right? Like this. We have lots of these sort of graphs. Who's doing what? How are they getting funded? Are they outside the country, inside the country? Whether they're Tata, who's paying, whom. So anyway, so what Shiv Nadar's group does is they are training teachers electronically. So en masse, you can see, if to get it in mass, how do you, 500 million children, how do you train? Our teachers, to train these 500 million children, how do you need teachers? So that is that. And then the UN, UNESCO and all have bots. So at middle of the night, you have a question on sexuality, you can ask your bot using your, so parents are totally bypassed. Regular teachers are totally bypassed. We are all thinking, we are in charge, but we are not, because they're using chatbots. They're replacing them. They have peer educators who are already, if you want a human face, you have a peer educator. So this is how they're getting it done, and they're getting it done fast. There are MOUs with nothing is spared. Guides, bulbuls, association. Everybody's learning. Like guides and bulbuls, the most important thing is comprehensive sexuality education. And the results in America itself isn't great for all this. The result shows that 2020. And actually, for 20 to 25% of the people who go comprehensive sexuality education, there are some meta studies. It shows that they actually engage in more risky sexual behavior and they get depression and all of that. That's what it's showing, even in Western countries. So this is how comprehensive sexuality education is entering. Now, the before, when we had regular sex education, we would talk about how if you get pregnant, abortion is not some light thing. So you have, of course, these day after pills, or whatever, night after pills, or whatever they have. So you can take chemical abortions are conducted for early stage abortion. So you can just go have a good time, enjoy yourself with multiple partners, and just pop in this pill the next day. So if there is some fertilization, that can be taken care of. So it's so Bhruna Hatya is a big deal. I think Sir can talk about this whole thing on it's this Pancha Agni Vidya and all of that. It's not how for us at any stage it's still a life to do Hatya is. So there is no consideration of ethics of abortion at all. Now, the other thing is the it's what the US Christians in America are against abortion, big time against abortion, because of it's life and pro-life movement and all of that. So they're sort of strange in the sense they're very much pro-life, but okay with capital punishment on the other hand. So because that's a Christian thing of pro-life, the more jivas you can bring and make them good Christians, that's sort of their goal. And so there's a huge anti-abortion movement in the US on the right, and that's another reason why Trump has put a stop to International Planned Parenthood Foundation. In fact, Planned Parenthood Foundation is focused. It makes $2 to $3 billion every year for providing abortion services all over the world. And India, it's called the Family Planning Foundation of India. Yeah, so they do that. Now, so in the US you have some states which say no. You can actually the pro-abortion people go on to fighting for abortion rights till the very end, till late term, till the baby's about to be born. You can still have an abortion. Right now, there's also an industry that harvests all these cells. The stem cell research of the fetus. So that's another rabbit hole you don't want to even enter. So it gets really dark when you say, yeah, abortion, okay, somebody does something, let's look the other way. But it's not as simple as that. Now, how has all this come into India? I'll just give you 3 or 4 laws that have come into India just on this sexuality education, right? So we'll go back to the UN AIDS, and it's called the International Committee of Jurists in United Nations, who talk about human rights. They say the expert jurists redefine human rights and criminality. So there's a definition of human rights and criminality. Now, here's the thing. They don't want, right now you have a POXO Act which says below 18, if you have sexual relationship with a child, with a minor, it is a criminal offense. Okay. Now, they want to remove that 18-year-old barrier. They don't want to have these laws. So they have redefined. So the UN legal experts who have written, there's something called the 8 March principles that they came up with as a white paper to say what should be human rights and what should be acceptable sexual rights, right? And what they ended up saying is consensual sexual activity is okay, but they never define an age under which it's not okay. So these are UN people who are saying if the sexual action is okay, activity is consensual, it's fine. Now, what happens is most children who are sexually abused at a small age, they might even want more of it as a small age, as a way of, they get messed up. So psychology has gone through a lot of this. If you have a 4-year-old that has been sexually molested, whatever, they might continue or not say anything for more. There are power dynamics, there's trauma, there's all kinds of things because they don't know how to deal with it. So right now, the way the United Nations is trying to say is, if regardless of age, intergenerational, whatever, regardless of age, if a child can have sexual relationship with an adult, whatever, they don't even mention the age. If it's consensual sexual relation, it's okay. On the other side, you're indoctrinating with comprehensive sexuality education. You're telling children, go explore all kinds of sexual, maybe an older person can give you some tricks that a peer may not be able to give you. Right? So on the other side, you're putting in these sort of negative samskars of sexual education. But on this side, you're saying if it's consensual. So very soon our children will say, this is my right and I want to explore. And who are you to stop? Right? Because in terms of this is my personal, it's my human right. So now, the 8 March principle was so bad that they withdrew it temporarily. But that's basically their agenda. And of course, we are in our own thing, we can't be sort of bothered. Now, the POXO Act, right, of 2012 in Bharat is an act that is very centered on the child and protecting the child. Now, UNICEF and another NGO, they came up with some research where they looked at some case in Madras High Court. There's a Justice Verma committee, in Madras, and they brought this thing to the Law Commission, and they suggested to the Law Commission that the consent for sexual activity should be removed from 18 and should be brought down to 16 years of age. They did that, and they falsified data to do this, and they presented saying we should bring the consent, citing if a 19-year-old is having sexual relationship with a 17-year-old, it's not that okay. It's not like a 60-year-old is sort of messing around, so it's okay. These things happen. Right? So it's not such a criminal activity. But our courts already have special courts. We have special courts when a 19-year-old is in a relationship with a 14 or a 16-year-old, 4-5-year-old. Different. We have special courts to deal with it, where the procedure is not that stringent, and the punishment is not that strict. So we have special courts. But these guys manipulate the data, and they say that we should bring that age down. And because they falsified data, the Law Commission said no. There was a whistleblower. They said your whole data, and UNICEF immediately, they only funded the research, but they immediately pulled their name out of that project. But instead, what the ministry said was, yes, we cannot bring the age down, but what we will do is have comprehensive sexuality education for all children as the antidote to this thing, because they tell you the comprehensive sexuality education prevents risky behavior, prevents this, prevents that. That's what they claim, but they have no data to claim it. That's what they say. So there is a push to bring down the sexual consent to 16. That's number one. Number two, they changed the age for marriage from 18 to 21 for girls. And how did Niti Aayog, actually Niti Aayog presented this suggestion to the legislation, because they interviewed, there was a survey conducted, Niti Aayog conducted a survey to some young people, and they said, what do you think? Should it be 18 or 21? And a bunch of them said, should it be 21? They said, chalo, we'll make it 21. So you can have sex at 16, but you cannot marry till 21. 18 to 21 for girls has become. Even in America, California is a state where I live in, sometimes at Florida, but even in the US, California does not have, it's a very progressive, very left-leaning state. There's no age. If you want to marry at 12, you can, as long as your guardian say yes. But in India, we're pushing marriage to 21 for girls in the name of women's empowerment, and health, as if a girl getting pregnant at 18 or 19, is injurious to her health. Right? 18 or 19 getting pregnant is, you're an adult, and people know what they're doing at 18 and 19. So we've moved that. Right? The third thing, what we've done is a law called the medical termination of pregnancy. This is relates to abortion. We used to have it at 21 weeks of gestation. We've moved it to 24 weeks. So 6 months, up to 6 months, when you're actually showing and the baby is kicking in your womb, you can go and get an abortion. And with the science, progress in science that we have today, a fetus that comes out at 6 months is viable, is alive. It can live. So these are the ethical questions we need to ask. Can we just kill a baby just like that? Is that civilizationally okay? There is no talk on ethics on all of this. So all these have infiltrated the legal system, where you can actually, you're trying to bring down the age, decriminalize pedophilia, destigmatize it. In fact, Ashoka has this whole destigmatizing of. See, the old days in every society, you had people who were deviant, but deviant sexual behaviors on the fringes of society. The critical race theory and Marxist ideas basically say no. We need, when they say dismantle, no, we need to center the margin. They will say, what is centering the margin? The people who are on the fringes of society, like pedophiles and deviant sexual behavior, people who are sort of the scum of society. They want to have them centered. They want them to be so-called included. So that's the inclusivity. When you hear the word inclusivity, that's what they mean. So in fact, Ashoka University, we talk about this in Snakes in the Ganga. They have, in their gender studies department, they bring this lady, I forget, Jaya Sharma. Of course, she has to be a Sharma. Jaya Sharma, who is part of something called Kinky Collective. Right? So Kinky Collective, she comes to Ashoka University, and these are people who have deviant. I don't even want to get into it, but there's all kinds of what they do in their bedroom, and they want to be destigmatized. They want to say, yes, I have multiple partners, and that should be okay. And it's called Kinky Collective. It means, kink is a word that's used for sexual deviance in the West. And Ashoka University trains their children. You pay 10 lakhs a year for your child, 10, 12 lakhs a year to learn about these things. Right? And that's at the elites. I mean, the elites, we can leave, let them go to hell in a handbasket. That's fine. But this is happening to children, which is the heartland of India, right? Kids that are aspirational, like Jharkhand, tribals who can't read and do math. But so Jharkhand, incidentally, an eighth standard, so with so much sex education and all that, an 8th standard kid can do first standard math, can do addition 40%, or 45-50% of an 8th standard kid, of 8th standard kids can do addition, subtraction, but they can't do multiplication, division. But of course, we need sex education. Very important to teach them how to masturbate. Yeah, this is how bad our system is. So that's what goes on there. Now, so you're doing that, and then so the law. So they've also, so that's how the law part is. The legal departments are getting, the legal ministries are being encroached, because you have to make these rules so that all these. So one side you're sexualizing them, second side you're telling them your rights are important. Don't worry about anything else, and you can fight. On the third side, you're saying you're decriminalizing sexual behavior, all of that, and saying, "Aur bhi karo, go after your desires." So this is really dangerous, and how it is happening, and how Tatas and all these other guys, the big industries that Mahindras and all, are putting money into all of this, right? I won't say Mahindras, but anyway, the Piramals are into this. The Niti Aayog is a whole corrupt organization. Sorry, pardon me, but I have to say it. The Now, all this also leads to activism. So when they tell you that, they tell the children that if you these are your sexual rights and you should fight for them. So that's also part of comprehensive sexuality education. If somebody denies you these rights, which are so fundamental to you, then you need to go and fight for those rights, because they are your fundamental rights to have pleasure. And if anyone stops you from having sexual pleasure, then you really need to fight for it. So that's the message that the children are getting. Now let's quickly go to, I don't know how much time I have. Global citizenship. I'll just give you some brief overview of global citizenship education and social emotional learning. Now, first maybe social emotional learning. Now, social emotional learning, name like everything else, sounds very good. But in 2014, they say we will have a class 1 institute in India, in Delhi. And we, of course, UNESCO class 1 office, it's a thing of pride for us. So they start this institute called the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Peace and Sustainability. It's a tier 1 institute of the UNESCO, supposed to be a great thing of pride. The government of India funded this for many years. Even now, I think they fund it a little bit. Now, private companies have come in because they want data. So Samsung and Microsoft have started coming in because they want the data of these children who are being trained. Now, UNESCO, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute trains in something called social emotional learning. Now, social emotional learning is a lot of these things, Rajiv ji talks about digestion and all of that. But a lot of these things come from mind sciences that have come from Bharat. Neem Karoli. So there was this, if I have some time, I can get into some of the side stories, but if I don't have, how much time do I have?
Actually, no, it is 11:05.
Already, okay.
11:05.
So
another 10-15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. So anyway, so it comes from this guy who digested, who's a Harvard scholar who goes to Neem Karoli Baba and understands some of how Baba's meditation techniques, all of that, learns a lot, and goes back to Harvard and develops this this concept of emotional intelligence, and gets a New York Times bestseller out of it. And initially, he would talk about Neem Karoli Baba being, is the person who taught him all of this, because he took a fellowship from Harvard and and then went back to Harvard and completed his PhD. His name is Dan Goleman. So he himself says that, and then later as he started recoined this whole phrase as emotional intelligence, he abandoned Neem Karoli Baba's source and sort of said, "This is me, and I am doing it." And he had a New York Times bestseller. Corporations started coming to him, and he became really rich and this expert in emotional intelligence. Now, simultaneously, there's another guy that, this theosophy movement, right, which sort of failed after Krishnamurti, sort of parted ways. The Theosophical Society is big in Chennai. This was Annie Besant, who came in, the late 1800s. The whole of Europe wanted sort of a messiah to replace Christ, and they thought J.D. Krishnamurti would be that. And it's sort of a hodgepodge of digested yoga and Indian mind sciences and meditation techniques into a Western framework. Anyway, so there's this guy who learned a lot of meditation techniques from Fitzer Institute, it's called. He took those techniques, and in Detroit, he had this big baseball team, and he used these techniques of meditation and all to win, to train his team. Because he was a theosophist and he learned those techniques. Now, these two people, Goleman and Fitzer, come together. Fitzer is a very rich guy. He funds, because he owns a baseball team and all that, he funds this, and they go to Yale University in the US, and they come up with something called, they work with children. And that time, in the 90s, children were not paying attention. There was a lot of violence. They were not eating properly. They could not focus. The attention deficit syndrome was on the rise. So they wanted to do something, and they started this social emotional learning. So it was all okay till a certain point of meditation, and even now it has a bit of meditation. What Mahatma Gandhi Institute MGIEP sells. So very superficially, you'll say, yeah, you can chant Om, and you'll think, oh, what's wrong with that? Fine. So it has a bit of all of that, of some so-called good things, but we don't need their their blueprint of how to do meditation or dhyan or any of that. So then they come up with it, and then when critical race theory, which is another theory of equity, becomes big in the US, it becomes transformative social emotional learning. Now, this transformative social emotional learning is where all these Marxist ideas come into social emotional learning. And that's what the Mahatma Gandhi Institute sells. Now, what they do in their own literature, they use, to very simple terms, they use psychology, behavioral science, and cognitive science, and they shape your behavior. They shape your samskar so that you get behavior. So it's essentially putting in a different kind of samskar. Now, what they do is they give a child, so you take part of global citizenship education, I'll just get into that just to make this example clear, is that there's this third thing I said is the global citizenship education, where they tell you migration is is not a big problem. You should embrace migration because they're global citizens. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Why Bangladeshi? Why do you have all these barriers? Rohingya Muslims, of course, bhai, whatever. Ganga, Jamuna, things like that. Right? So you entertain everybody. All your the Seema, this geographical Seema is just mindless. There's nothing to do. So they tell these children that now today Rohingya Muslims are coming in, and on the other side you've been told that desh ko raksha karna hai, borders, military is important to keep our borders. So small child is told on one hand that you need to protect your nation and its borders. At the same time, it's given global citizenship education where it's supposed to be Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, all of that. And they don't know how to process this. They're two conflicting ideas. So the Mahatma Gandhi in its literature will tell you, we give a small child two virodha bhava of ideas, two conflicting, contradicting ideas, and say what, and they plant it in them. Now, these two ideas in the mind, when deeply planted, it causes a lot of conflict mentally, and it makes them anxious. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with two contradicting ideas. Children, adults themselves don't know. Imagine children. So you do that. So then they get guilt and fear. It manifests as, and so that's where the behavioral science and all psychology and all that comes. So you create this anxious child, and they have to manifest anger, guilt, fear. So you take these emotions and then you channel into activism. Yeah, and then you go fight. Why should there be borders? Why should they, do all of that? You channel into using woke ideas. Now, and then their channel, they become activists. Then they come to the next set of conflicting ideas. They're hungry there, and you have food. Don't eat. Now you have food. You're hungry. You can't eat, but then somebody else is hungry, so you have to, not eat. So this is how social emotional learning goes. Every university in the Delhi area, everywhere, MP also, they have signed MOUs with Mahatma Gandhi Institute to get certified in social emotional learning. Every day there are teachers who say, I'm certified in social emotional learning by the MGIEP. So this is what they create. They take a stable child, create anxiety in them, and then channel them using behavioral science to become an activist. So this is again the third subject. And of course, the fourth subject is global citizenship education. And that has a huge problem in and of itself, because global citizenship is, for example, a part of global citizenship education is also water. In fact, the United WHO believes that having a bath and you're wasting water, because bathing is a performative act. Just like I told you, gender, I'm performing an act of being female today. Same way, bathing is performative, and so it can be done away with. You don't have to worry about bathing because you're saving water for environmental reasons. Right? So these are the kinds of things that are fed into children. And that's why you have so many children who are climate anxious. Oh, they're like, the world is going to fall apart. We're not going to live. We're not going to live. Everything is going to be doom and gloom in a few years. So now you have, global citizenship is about social justice, equity focused. Equity. So when you hear the word equity is not equality. Equality means I treat you equally. We give an exam and you write the exam, and you write the exam, and whoever. So equally, both will be given a paper, both will sit under the fan, both will have a test, whatever. Both will be given the material to prepare. That's, I treat you both equally. Equity is something totally different. Equity is equality of outcome. Yeah, outcome. So now she performs well and he doesn't, then there is a systemic problem. I have biased, I've done something in the exam paper where I'm making sure he's not doing well. So we have to understand the, again, word play. We have to understand every word, what it means. So equity is a big part of global citizenship, and we have to prioritize globalism versus nationalism. So there is no place for national identity and national borders and sovereignty. So again, now India signing the pandemic treaty is good global citizenship, right? India not signing, America not signing the pandemic treaty is not good global citizenship because they want sovereignty. So you see how it starts becoming. It's not Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Nobody told us Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is to take all your thing and give it to somebody, right? But we just all our mantris will come and say, "Oh, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is global citizenship." It's not. You're signing your rights away. So again, devil is in the details of what all these words really mean. So now there's something called global citizenship consciousness and global citizenship competence. So again, wordplay. So China is okay with global citizenship consciousness, where they're okay with understanding other cultures. So China's version of global citizenship education is they study the World Trade Organization treaties. Who's got how much tariff? What happened? What is the history of tariffs? Who traded with us well? How do we? What are the international laws governing all of this? Then they talk about cultures, languages. How do you study the other? Right? How do you put Confucius institutes everywhere? How do you bring China's culture everywhere into America? And how do you promote Chinese values? They have their whole curriculum is completely different. Ours is more, so that is called global citizenship consciousness, where you have mutual respect for other cultures, diversity. You celebrate big festivals, like what the ICCR does. You just go and present India nicely, Bharatanatyam. There's that's consciousness. But competence is this garbage of these Marxist ideas, and that's what we've signed up for. We've signed up for global citizenship competence by telling our children, let the Rohingya Muslims in. In fact, the UN, guy who was in charge, I have it somewhere here, where he said, and I wanted to read out what he said. Just give me a second. Well, I don't get that quote, but basically they want you to embrace all these the migrant. Europe, in fact, America also has this problem of the southern border being open, and Trump came and closed. That's why Trump has done a lot of good things for Americans, as much as we might have an issue here with his tariff policies. But for America, he shut down the borders. He said no more of the global citizenship stuff. We don't want migrants. But as the United Nations says, migrants bring a lot of cultural value and they can help with your economy. They make these statements, United Nations. So we should embrace them and use them. This is a big, asset that they have. So Rohingya Muslims coming in, you embrace them because you have all these constructions to do and all of that. So employ them and make your economy better. So that is essentially global citizenship. I mean, I can go on and on, but essentially we have a corrupt. I'm not saying everybody is corrupt, but we have a whole lot of the government that is corrupt. The peer education is a problem. Last thing is the Rashtriya RKSK, Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karyakram. It's called RKSK through the Ministry of Health. So RKSK is a Trojan horse which is used to promote comprehensive sexuality education. It has Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karyakram. That's for young people, and it comes. So what the Ministry of, they're so clever. What the Ministry of Education cannot do, because you can't bring in sex education and all of that, it comes in through the Health Ministry. And the Health Ministry quietly gets act. So they made a rule that every school, every government school has 2 wellness ambassadors. We can't read and we can't do math, but we have two wellness ambassadors. And what's their job? Their job is to teach you about sex education. And who funds them and who trains these wellness ambassadors? People like Population Foundation of India, run by Tata, and the Shiv Nadar people. So this is how it all works. So I don't know what we'll do with our children. I think one more generation, and I think all of us will actually, people who have children here will see that the children, that they don't relate with them anymore, and they just put up with them because otherwise the relationship totally goes away. So the next generation is only going to get worse, and it's going to happen in remote areas. I mean, so far India was sort of okay because of the hinterlands, people who were not affected, not because of places like Delhi and Bangalore, not the urban English speaking people like myself, but it was because of the heartland, that kept preserved culture. But now we've systematically gone in there to destroy young children there. So that's a really grave problem that we face. So with that, I'll stop, and any questions I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have some time for questions. If probably, the people either from the joining online or offline can probably, if they want to share something, they can always do. And finally, after the QA session, there will be a 2-minute summary by Dr. Saluja, and then we will be summing it up. Now it is open for, you can sit and ask.
It's very nice that what is the original case today that you have shown us. There is a solution. I believe we are missing 3 points, especially in our Indian society. Ma is the answer. Nowadays, what is happening? जो लड़कियां पढ़ रहे हैं, उनके दिमाग में ये है कि हम पढ़ेंगे, हम नौकरी करेंगे. जब वो माँ बनती हैं आफ्टर मैरिज, hardly 6 months or 7 months time में बच्चा पालने के लिए बनी हो क्या? And there just once again they stop doing the mother's job and they once again go for job. दूसरी प्रॉब्लम एजुकेशन के साथ, they don't want to live in joint family. ये दोनों आंसर हैं हमारी सोसाइटी के. जॉइंट फैमिली है तो माँ जॉब पे जा रही है तो दादा दादी ने संभालेंगे, और माँ अपने आप में, इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता माँ कितनी बड़ी, माँ इज ऑलवेज लिटरेट. आगे वाली, हमसे पहले वाली जनरेशन में लेडीज लिटरेट नहीं होती है. कोई कह सकता है माँ लिटरेट नहीं है. हर माँ लिटरेट होती है, क्योंकि वो बच्चे की गुरु होती है, वो बच्चों को सही शिक्षा देती है. व्हाट माय फादर टॉट, तुम्हारे लिए एजुकेशन बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि तुम अपने बच्चे को
क्वेश्चन शार्प करना है. आप कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं तो शॉर्ट.
Just question.
एनईपी जो है, आई बिलीव कि एनईपी में आंसर है इसका. हमारे टीचर्स, मेरा अपना एक्सपीरियंस है कि जब हम बच्चों से कम्युनिकेट करते हैं.
आपका प्रश्न क्या है वो मम्मा?
आप हमें सॉल्यूशन बताइए.
जी, सॉल्यूशन क्या है?
Okay, so I personally feel that the NEP has a few crumbs of different languages, IKS, but it's not integrated. If I have to do a forensic look, take a look at the NEP, knowing what I know about the SDGs, the NEP is made to fit the SDGs of the United Nations, and in between they've given you a Ram Mandir, they've given you some things for distraction, where without too much funding, like you have Matrubhasha textbooks in different Matrubhashas. At the same time, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, everybody's moving to English medium. Okay, so there is no, you just namesake, I throw some 2-3 crores to make some textbook, keep you busy. You think, okay, I've got some Indic knowledge system. Indic knowledge systems, like I said initially, is not integrated. You cannot go to college and suddenly look at Vyakaranam, because you have to know the Ashtadhyayi, you have to know Panini Sutras. You can't just go at BA and then say, okay, let me study the Ashtadhyayi without any background in Samskritam, right? So it's an eyewash. If you really wanted to bring in Indic knowledge system, as an example, you will start at age 4 for Kantastikaranam, Amarakosha, Ashtadhyayi, all these things will be Kantast. I know, I've home educated my kids and I know what that takes, right?
The teachers are the answer, no?
So no, it's not the teachers, it's also the policy that
NEP says we need ethical teachers.
NEP is a problem because it does not, in a sincere way, address Indic knowledge systems to be integrated. Indic knowledge is like a silo. Yeah, it's just for one special thing outside. Like I run this Gurukulam called Agastya Gurukulam. It's a non-profit. It's in Sanskrit medium, and what we do is we take. We are a few individuals who are funding this out of our own money. We take the CBSE system. We look at Aryabhatiyam, Bijaganitam, all of that, and map it onto CBSE, and which is what Samskrit Promotion Foundation is also doing. And we actually teach kids, and we tell them, and so we have to create an entire ecosystem. We have to tell parents that, hey, like I educated my two kids in at home with Shastriya Sangeetam, Vyakaranam, all of that, because I did not know all of that. I did not want my children to be like me, right? So both my children are much better in in bhasha than me, in Vyakaranam, in Ganitam, things like that they have learned, right? And so you integrate that. You integrate it at a very young age. And if you do not do that, right? If you do not do that, you cannot go magically in college with a westernized education and then start studying Panini like a novel. It does, it doesn't work like that. It's a lot of hard work of Kantasti Karanam in very Balya Avastha has to be spent in Kantasti Karanam of so many things. So there is a grammar phase, a lot of Kantasthikaranam has to be done. Then there is a logic phase where you start teaching logic of causation, and then there is a rhetoric phase where then you can then commit to memory. When I say acha, I can't be doing I can't be doing ach means I know what ach is. You have to be able to zip and unzip mentally like that, and that you can't do it in college. So it's just a waste. What the NEP has done is kept Indic knowledge systems in a silo, has not integrated it. This is just for Ganitam, I can tell you that we are doing this integration, right? So we haven't really, it's just an eyewash if you ask me, the NEP is.
My pranam to Adani Chankiran Saluja ji, and I congratulate Vijaya ji and Rajiv Malhotra ji for such a wonderful compilation, and all the learned members who are present over here. My question would be very specific because she has initiated the discussion. What is the answer? What is the solution? And you have tried to answer. I'll just give one instance. सर आज ही एक कुलपतियों का समूह है, कोठारी जी ने बनाया हुआ है, तो उसमें एक आया है, वायर ने एक लेख लिखा है, IK is distorting the higher education. Why IK is needed in higher education, and they have given certain things. ये reverse करेंगे progress को. There are 7 to 8. I have that. I will send you if you need. So overall, it was felt that IKS is a retrogressive concept, and Ministry of Education is doing a lot to make it popularize, and Indian education system will be distorted with this integration of IKS. Your answer is through IKS. You have given certain ways. My work is also Indian knowledge system, Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. I remember when I was presenting my PhD, IGNOU was just initiated PhD in education, and I presented my significance of ancient Indian sciences in contemporary education, and all left people were there, and they started mocking me. Yo, Indra has started raining. What your Indra will do? सर बारिश हो रही थी और उन्होंने काफी 32-33 लोग थे, मेनन साहब थे और सब लोग बैठे थे. जिद हुई, सिलेक्शन हो गया, मगर मैंने वहां से PhD नहीं किया. I did my PhD and that is based on ancient Indian sciences. Now after coming this government, my book has become hot cake. विद्या भारती का जब हुआ तो मुझे बोला गया कि आप इसकी, तो NPT में गोविंद शर्मा जी ने इसको पब्लिश करवाया भारतीय विज्ञान पे, और ये 14 साल तक ये किताब ऐसे ही रही. If missionaries are successful in tribal areas, every maid, every Jesus भगवान, ईशु देवता, ओम जय जीसस, ये आरती होती है ट्राइबल एरिया में. नॉर्थ ईस्ट में पूरा कन्वर्शन हो गया है, पूरे ट्राइबल रांची, झारखंड, उड़ीसा में हो गया है. मिशनरीज आर स्टिल वेरी एक्टिव देयर. धर्मांतरण बाकी धर्मों का भी हो रहा है जिस तरीके से हो रहा है. आई वॉज इन NIOS and there are 500 गुरुकुल्स accredited with NIOS, और इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम सबसे पहले स्कूल एजुकेशन में NIOS लेकर आया. My answer is कि what we are doing. बच्चे आपके संस्कार किसके, who is raising your children. I congratulate you, you have come in this area. But how school should come up, how parents should be educated, we have to develop one mechanism, because it will, more than children, parents are needed to be guided more. आप उनको पढ़ाइए. एज शी सेड कि औरतों को एक तो ज्वाइंट फैमिली खत्म हो रही है, दूसरा बच्चों को की अपब्रिंगिंग जो है वो मेड की, घर की जो नौकरानी है उनकी भाषा बोल रहे हैं. वो एक है कि हमें विमेन लिबरेशन का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आप अपनी जिम्मेदारियों से दूर भागे. आई टोटली अग्री विथ यू. सो सोल्यूशन क्या है? सोल्यूशन इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम, आई अग्री, जो हमारे संस्कार हैं, जो प्री नेटल नेटल पढ़ाते हैं हम कई यूनिवर्सिटीज में है, उस संस्कार से लेके हम सिर्फ एक उदाहरण दे देते हैं अभिमन्यु का कि गर्भाधान संस्कार हुआ और उसके बाद I congratulate you because you are thinking in that way. My question is, there should be if you say solution, there should be one task force in contemporary educational scenario for parents and teachers also. स्टूडेंट्स को ज्यादा पढ़ा के मुझे नहीं लगता है, उन्हें तो एक्सपीरियंशियल और उनको उनमें संस्कार हमें लाने पड़ेंगे, टीचर्स के व्यवहार से और बाकी पेरेंट्स के व्यवहार से. बट इफ वी से अबाउट सोल्यूशन, माय क्वेश्चन इज, what should we do to make it concrete and from the apex bodies?
I will answer. So, a couple of points here. What will make it, what is the alternative? So I have a sample size N of 2, which I did for my own children. I educated them at home. I never sent them to school. I taught them Samskrit, Matru Bhasha, and
But how many
okay.
Vijaya
No, let me finish. Okay, and I'll tell you one thing. No, and I don't know any of these subjects, as you can clearly tell, right, from the way I speak. Now, I found people. I did it, and the worst part is when my children were ready to graduate. They were home educated. I wanted to put them in Bharat for college. Of course, you can't, because CBSE, all these people, you cannot go private. Private students are not allowed. Permitted. You can only go to NIOS. And NIOS, sorry to say, is a very low standard. It's a standard if you want to go play tennis and be a tennis star, and you want to just pass one chap of an exam, you can get it. NIOS is not at the cutting edge. You're not going to get leaders out of NIOS, academic leaders. Okay, so it's not, you cannot do NIOS and get into IIT. Let me put it that way. And I'm looking for IIT. I'm looking for the top, right? Now, so I could not apply in India, so I had to send my children back. I moved from America all the way so that they can be here. So they could not go, so they went to Stanford for computer science, and the second one was doing aerospace engineering in Stanford. So for my children are okay for Stanford, but not for any ordinary state Bharat school, college. Right, that's number one. Number two, I started Agastya Gurukulam as an individual. But institution building requires the government. It cannot be done. I have Agastya Gurukulam, and my job, my goal now with Agastya Gurukulam is to get 1,008 children. That's all. I'm not even looking for next generation. 1,008 leaders who are top notch, brilliant kids who can straddle both worlds. Like my younger son can now, he's an aerospace engineer. He's not all that brilliant, he's an average, above average, like any of our children. And the reason I'm giving you his example is he has, he teaches Panini in the weekend. He's Pushpa Dikshit Mataji's top student. Every holiday he goes back to Chhattisgarh, because he can be sitting in Silicon Valley, but he doesn't. He comes to Chhattisgarh because of the value. He understands the value of this, not only the Guru, of Shastra. Very true. Because you know how deep it is, because they're not stupid boys, right? They're young, they have, it's like Swargaloka over there. Why should you, mosquito sitting in Bilaspur, why should you do that? But they know Shastra's, the beauty of Shastra, the depth of Shastra, right? So he comes back and teaches. So having gotten that, my goal with Agastya is to get 1,008 other children like that, who can then be distributed into various fields. Now, for a task force and all of that, I'm happy to, like you tell me UP, you go replicate Agastya. Agastya, we believe in Vidya Dhanam. In fact, we charge a fee, but we give free education to whomever. So I can take this, and it's an online school as well. I can make it, developing curriculum, all of that. I'm happy with my partners to go and implement it in UP or any of those states. In the south, it's a little harder. North, we can do. But this is not done by few individuals. I can criticize policy, and I can also have a plug and play program. But you should take my critique of the policy and use my plug and play. But that I have to stand for elections next to make that happen. You know, so I have all the pieces. I have all the pieces to ye chalu karne ke liye. I have all the pieces ready. You allow me or have somebody take this and go for it. We are printing books. Agastya has printed class 1 to 8 textbooks every class. Teacher training. We even started a teacher training institute, all out of our own money. We spent over 1.5 crores of personal money to do this every year. 1.5 crores out of personal money. I'm not joking, to do this. But no, there's nobody. Even to come and tell people what's going on, there's nobody. And Rajiv ji, has spent the past 30 years doing this with like nobody bothering. I mean, there's only so much individuals as one or two people. We don't make money. All this, we don't make money. I spend my own, I mean, I've been lucky that I've been given all this resources by Ishura. I can take my own flight. I can stay in my own hotel. I can get my own car. I don't worry. I don't need money from anybody. I'm fortunate for that. But beyond that, we can't do. We spend 1.5 crores every year out of our own pocket. Think about that. And we don't live in fancy. I eat on the floor. I have a small apartment. That's all. I could be using that 1.5 crores per month, per year to live somewhere in a bungalow and have servants and say child love. We don't do that. So that's all we can do as individuals.
पाठक जी, आप प्रश्न पूछ सकते हैं. Please unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
नमस्कार मैम. सभी को नमस्कार, यथायोग्य अभिवादन. जो अभी आपके पूरे विचारों को मैंने समझा, थोड़ा लेट मैंने ज्वाइन किया था, बट कहीं ना कहीं मुझे बहुत अच्छे टेक अवेज प्राप्त हुए कि वर्तमान संदर्भों में क्या प्रासंगिकता है इस विद्यालयी शिक्षा के लिए. जब हम बात करते हैं, साथ में मेरे क्वेश्चंस भी रेज हुए, तो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करना चाह रहा हूँ कि जब क्योंकि हम लोग शिक्षा से जुड़े हुए हैं, हमने मनोविज्ञान पढ़ा है, बहुत सारे हम लोग इस फील्ड में काफ़ी कुछ समझ बना पाए हैं अब तक, परंतु एक एज ए लेमैन, क्योंकि पेरेंट्स जो जब देख पाते हैं आज की डेट में जितने भी बालक हैं वो क्या हो रहा है, उनका नर्चरिंग डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स या सोशल मीडिया, डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ मीडिया के माध्यम से नर्चरिंग हो रही है. तो एक तरह पेरेंटिंग की भूमिका में जो मूल्य संस्कार जो अलग टाइप के दिए जा रहे हैं वो डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स के द्वारा दिए जा रहे हैं या सोशल मीडिया के द्वारा दिए जा रहे हैं. तो नर्चरिंग का एक एस्पेक्ट वो बन गया है. अब क्या मेरा प्रश्न जब आते हैं, क्या हम अपने अभिभावकों को केंद्रीय भूमिका में ला सकते हैं? केंद्रीय भूमिका करता है कि पेरेंट्स ही नर्चरिंग करें, उन संस्कारों को दें जो भारतीयता से युक्त हों, ऐसे संस्कार जो भारतीयता से युक्त हों. क्या हमारे पास ऐसे अभी वर्तमान संदर्भों में हमारे पास ऐसे कुछ समाधान है कि एक लेमैन पेरेंट जो अपने बालकों तक खुद भी कर पाए, और दूसरा हमें भारतीयता के संस्कारों के साथ रखते हुए एक अच्छा भारतीय नागरिक बनाने के लिए साथ में उसे आधुनिक भी रखना है. तो इसके साथ कैसे तालमेल बनाए, वो भी एक लेमैन पेरेंट. बस एक छोटा सा मेरा प्रश्न.
Okay. How do you bring them back? Now, number one, let me tell you, you're talking about social media. We all very easily blame social media for Instagram, for these, for children getting bad. Yes, we do. I agree that is the thing, and the government can do something about it. But more importantly, do you know that the Niti Aayog has funded 2 startups, one for comprehensive sexuality education and one for social emotional learning, so that it can be out of the the vision of the people, the gatekeepers of education. So this is, so I'll be happy. We don't have to do anything, some Bharatiya Samskar also. Forget all that. If we can just get rid of what we actually do through the government, right? Like funding social emotional learning, funding through taxpayer money. Why are we? If we can just stop that, we have gained. 2 programs they have funded, as in like the Atal Yojana, whatever, right? They have funded 2 startups. They can stop that. If you can put pressure on Tatas and all these people, the government is make vyavasthik roop se ye kar rahe hain. What are we talking? I mean, this government was supposed to be favorable, is actually doing this actively. Promote, it's not by accident something happened. They have a blueprint and they're actually promoting it. That's what is mind boggling. And we are just happy with the Ram Mandir. You know, we are actually, Vyavasthit Roop se, we are systematically laying out. We are funding non-profits. The government is funding. The government is training 2 wellness ambassadors in every school. We stop those 2 wellness ambassadors and say, just forget even Matru Bhasha and Samskrit. Just teach reading and math. Let's start there. I'm not even asking for some scars of civilization. That is like a dream in some other Janma. I'm just saying, let's get back to 2005. Let's get back to, 2008, before all this crap came in. And they've systematically built. That's where we are. We're so far behind. And what can parents do when the entire system is against you? When they're telling your children can have sex at 16, you cannot marry them off at 21. You have comprehensive sexuality education given by some NGO. What can parents? They don't even know what's happening. Let alone, first to say no to the bad samskaras and start putting good. My first step is, let's say no to the bad ones before we even get to Sabhyata and Sanskar and let Bharatiya values and Mahila staying at home. I'm not even there. I just don't want, even out of these 3-4, can we just stop comprehensive sexuality education? And can we shut down the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Peace and Sustainability in Delhi? Big step. Small, low-hanging fruit, small. That's all I'm asking for.
Thank you. Sir,
लास्ट क्वेश्चन
ये लास्ट क्वेश्चन है.
इतना बड़ा देश और उसके सामने उससे बड़ा संसार, कैसे उसको फाइट आउट करें, इस तरह चर्चा करते रहे. एक छोटा सा प्रयास में आपने डेवलप किया, अंडरस्टैंडिंग इंडिया वो शुरू किया, उसमें राजीव जी का एक फैक्टर लगाया. लेकिन ये बहुत छोटे छोटे नीति आयोग की कोई पॉलिसी तैयार कर दे रहा है, उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना गवर्नमेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन के लिए करीब करीब लाजमी है. और हमारे पेरेंट्स हैं, वो इतने इनोसेंट हैं और उनके पास कोई और ऑप्शन नहीं है बच्चों को मॉडरेट नहीं कर रहा. मिडिल लोअर मिडिल क्लास के लोग जितनी भी शिक्षा ग्रहण कर रहे हैं, वो शिक्षा केवल रोजगार के लिए कर रहे हैं और खासतौर पर सरकारी नौकरी. तो ये जो पूरा इकोसिस्टम इस तरीके से डेवलप किया है, जब तक हम इसको तोड़ेंगे तब तक शायद कुछ संभावना मुझे तो नहीं दिखाई दे रही. यदि आपके पास
I tell you just two, and ending on a positive note. Okay. So the one is on content, the other is on pedagogy. Now, which is relevant for today. The content would be, there is a story of the periodic table, and some of you may know it. Mendeleev was a big friend of Göttling in St. Petersburg those days in mid 1800s, and so Mendeleev was a chemist, chemistry guy. Göttling was a Vyakarana. He wanted to find the grammar for Siberian languages, Eastern European languages. So Göttling had taken the Ashtadhyayi, studied it really well, and wrote a 7-volume book on the grammar, of the Ashtadhyayi, right? He wrote it. And Mendeleev and they both were in the Academy of Sciences. And those days, interestingly, in the University of St. Petersburg, there were only 4 subjects: Western philosophy, religion, Indology, and just overall sciences, something like that, right? Just 4 subjects those days. And Indology was a huge subject in Western universities. So it goes to show how much they took from us. That the entire Sare University made 4 department, out of 4 department, 1 was Indology. So Göttling was part of the Indology department. And so what Mendeleev did, so Mendeleev and Göttling actually studied, and now they say that the periodic table actually is not just inspired, but was a copy of the Ashtadhyayi. So you have, you're all Sanskrit people, so you have this sthana and prayatna, on this table of the Aksharamala. And so what Mendeleev found was, he started arranging the atoms by atomic weight. And every so often he'd find one atom that is not it's like a noble gas, it's not reacting. And then he'll go again, there's a noble gas not reacting. And before the noble gas, there's another thing, another sort of gas that is very reactive. And after it is a soft metal. That was sort of the pattern. And then when he met Götling and he discussed the the Varnamala, the Matruka Pata, whatever you want to call it, he realized that this is how you arrange, because Sthana and Prayatna you had arranged, and he had done it by atomic weight and groups, with balances and things like that, with chemical reactions, so properties. So what Maharishi Panini did for language, to give a grammar, he got the grammar for chemistry, and that became, in so much so that 70 years he had left spaces in the periodic table. He says, I don't know, there's something that should come here based on this framework, but I don't know what it is. 70 years later they found, and he could tell 70 years before they were discovered, that this would be the element and this would be the properties based on what this framework did. So that is the power of such frameworks. We have grammar for dance, grammar for music, grammar for everything. We have masters in like this meta language of how do you create a framework to understand the universe. That's been the greatness of Bharatiya Shikshan, and Bharatiya Parampara. So if you can get that out, or if you can come up in today's world, I will tell you, you can study, Shiksha Shastra and come up with a great program for speech therapy. We do not innovate like that, because we know every sound, what is the, Bakhya Prayatna, Abhyantara Prayatna, all of that we know. Sthana, everything, how is the palette used? We can come, but they're not. Some Westerner will do it and then we'll sell back the speech therapy program to us, right? And then we'll say, like how yoga has been appropriated, things like that. So that is one thing. Now, at the end of this book, there is, there is one whole thing on the pedagogy of this monitorial system. So in around late 1800s, when the British left, they had a lot of British officers and soldiers had left a lot of orphans, children that they had with native Indian women, and they went back to the UK, leaving all these orphans. So the British were very upset, they were like, oh, all these children, especially young men, totally unruly, Anglo-Indian children, and no one to take care of, no one to give them Marga Darshanam. And so they said, there's a place called Egmore Redoubt. It was sort of a fortress which they fought the French in Madras. And once they defeated the French, this building was just there. And so they had housed them in this thing called the Madras Male Asylum. All these Anglo-Indian boys who were really unruly, badly behaved, did not know anything, nobody would educate them. And after all, they were their children. So what they did, they get this guy called Andrew Bell from Scotland. Andrew Bell was a missionary, and he had gone to America for rich families. So those days, only very rich in Europe and America could afford education. They had private tutors come home and teach them, and that was it. So what Andrew Bell does, so the British say, the governor of Madras says, you come, brings Andrew Bell and says, you teach these Bible education, something, so that these children, although they are half hours, we have to do something for them. So Bell comes down to Madras. He doesn't know what to do. He has around all these boys at all these ages. He has no idea how to control them. Bible is not working. They're the worst behaved kids, unruly, badly spoken. They can't read and write. They can't do anything, and he has to do something with them. So he tries to teach them Bible, this, that, nothing. One day he's walking on the Malabar coast and he sees these Thinnai schools, all schools had people writing on sand. Children were writing and then they would wipe out writing. That's how the patashalas of those days were. So he starts observing and he says, yes, they have so many children. They're all quietly, shant, they're just working. And then the older one teaching the younger one. It's all so quiet. And so he starts observing them. He goes back home and he says, Eureka, I've got it. Right? So he starts researching. Then he notices, he goes to villages, he sees one village schoolmaster and 200 children, all educated, all well disciplined. He's like, how is this possible in India? So he starts doing deep research on how do they learn, what do they learn. And he comes up with something called the Madras monitorial system. And it's nothing big to any of you, where you would think, is this something big? But it is, this Madras monitorial system changed the way the West educated their masses. Because before that, right, very few rich people were only educated in the West. We talk about this in the book. In the end, it's sort of a positive note to end the book. But so what he essentially did was he found out that in a class, like you as a teacher teach 3-4, in any Gurukul this happens, in Pushpa Dikshit Mataji's Gurukul this happens, where you teach 2-3 students, and then these students will go teach other students, right? So it is called a monitorial system. You get the best students regardless of age in a certain subject, so they teach the other children, and that way. And then the guru's job is just to go, okay, tell me, what is this? Okay, now you go teach her better. So you just sort of spot quiz, and you make sure everybody is, learning at their own pace. Yeah. So he writes a big book. So 10 years he does research on how to do Kantasthikaranam, how to learn tables. And then you should read, I've read all his letters back to England. He says, this Indian system is so much better than even what the Bible cannot teach character. This Indian system teaches. Bible could not teach them how to behave and be good character. This system, monitorial system, is given. So the British King George, right? He calls him back. Here is the picture. There is in Westminster Abbey. They're the highest, where they honor all their greats, right? The British greats. There's a frieze for him. There is a monument in his name, because he's the one who brought light to the West. So once this monitorial system became popular, the West immediately, with one teacher, if you can educate 500 people, and the Industrial Revolution was happening. They needed people to get into their factories. So that's how knowledge started. They started educating the masses of England. Once the English masses were educated, it spread to Europe. And there's another guy by the name of Joseph Lancaster who took the same thing, and then the reason why it comes out is that Lancaster and Bell start having a fight, because Lancaster says you stole it from India, and Bell says you stole it from me. So then he takes the system and goes to America, and the whole of America starts getting educated, right? So these systems are even valid today. Now the question now to you. So when I went to Bilaspur, to Pushpa Dikshit Mataji's Gurukulam, I used to wonder. So I asked my son, "What at 7 o'clock? What do you all do?" Because Mataji is taking care. She's 83. She takes care of a 90-year-old husband. She herself takes care of him. She doesn't let, here and there to lift or something, she will get help. But she herself feeds him. She makes sure, And so she will be asking questions. There'd be little groups, huddling and studying. So my sons, we're all studying like the previous day's lessons, and also helping each other study. And that's the monitorial system working in action. One 83-year-old with 40 boys, teenage boys. Think about it. We all know how teenagers are. One 83-year-old taking care of a 90-year-old husband with 45, 50 teenage boys living there. Yeah, she feeds them, she teaches them, and with her own pension, she funds them, right? And she gives another Vidyadan and gives them a place to stay. So those kinds of people still exist in this country, but we don't honor them. We don't even know how many of us know. I mean, this group is, because you all are tuned in. But how many Bilaspur? How many people even know where Bilaspur is, and how many people know there's a diamond like that in Bilaspur? So there are, and it rains in this country because of people like her. Because there are still people like that who give knowledge without expecting. There's no Padma Shri, no Bharat Ratna for people like that, right? And so that sort of a thing happens. So there is, and not only that, she's changed the pedagogy as well, the way of teaching. She's innovated. So there are people like that. We don't bother. So the question then remains is that if there is a monitorial system, then should we make children sit in class by age? First standard, second standard, third standard, and like everybody, you sit through a day and do different subjects, or should we put all the kids who are studying mathematics together in a room from 1st to 7th? And then how do we arrange classroom, by subject or by age? These are fundamental questions we need to ask, because in our Gurukulams, we've been thinking about by subject, because the older ones teach. We just assume that this model works. People ask me when I homeschool, right? Oh, what do your children do for entertainment and socializing? As if like my children, because they are at home, they don't get entertainment. So I said, I will answer that question, but first tell me what makes you think an 8-year-old should be with other 8-year-olds for 8 hours a day, and that's the right socialization. Nobody asks that. Like we never asked, should we learn by subject, all age in one subject, or should we go by age? Like now it's by age. These are fundamental questions that the NEP should have asked. Who's being educated? For what purpose? Those questions are not asked. We just assume all these things are correct. Right? So people will ask me, you're homeschooling, hey, what do they do for friends? What will they, as if they're like totally, I'm like, okay, what makes you think 8-year-old with other 8-year-old 8 hours a day is the right socialization? Nobody has asked that question. Nobody has answered that. That's how deeply colonized we are. So there are great things that are relevant today. We just need to pick them up and go with it. We don't need to do anything new.
Thank you. And I request Dr. Vijaya to conclude with his remarks.
धन्यवाद विजया जी। आपने प्रायः 5 विषयों को छूने का प्रयास किया। पहली बात तो स्थायी विकास से संबद्ध थी, फिर यौन शिक्षा से संबद्ध थी, उसी के साथ आपने सोशल और इमोशनल लर्निंग इसे भी लेने का प्रयास किया और ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप की बात भी की, और बीच बीच में 2 बिंदुओं की ओर आपने विशेष रूप से ध्यान खींचने का प्रयास किया। मुझे लगता है वह भी उस समझने की भी उसकी आवश्यकता। एक तो एनईपी को, एनईपी सूत्र बताती है, वो समाधान नहीं देती है। वो समाधान देने के लिए लोग हैं। मुझे तो ऐसा नहीं दिखाई दिया कि एनईपी ने बहुत सारे शिक्षा से संबद्ध प्रश्नों के उत्तर नहीं दिए। हमें देखना पड़ेगा, उसने बच्चे को समझने की बात की है, उसने कला शिक्षा की बात की है, उसने खेल शिक्षा की बात की है, उसने भारतीय भाषाओं की चर्चा की बात की है, उसने भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा को जोड़ने की बात की है, उसने विद्यार्थियों के बीच का पहला सिद्धांत ईशोपनिषद पर आधारित है, हर बच्चे में क्षमता विद्यमान है, उसे पहचानने और मान्यता देने की आवश्यकता है। एक और बिंदु है जिसे बार बार आपने दिया, राम मंदिर, वो भावनाओं का प्रश्न है। भावनाओं के तर्क नहीं हुआ करते हैं, उसके पीछे एक बहुत चिंतन का प्रश्न भी आ सकता है, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि वो अपने आप में एक विशिष्ट तत्व है। राजीव जी का साहित्य मैं लगभग पढ़ता रहा हूँ, और अभी जो पुस्तक संस्कृत में प्रकाशित हुई है उसकी भूमिका मेरे द्वारा ही लिखी गई है, और उसमें वे बहुत सारे प्रश्न चिंतन के लिए देते हैं। मुझे लगता है शिक्षा का अर्थ ही चिंतन का विकास है। सभी दर्शन समान नहीं हो सकते, हर दर्शन की सीमा होती है, और जब सीमा होती है तो नया चिंतन निकलता रहता है। और मुझे लगता है कि समस्याएं किस युग की नहीं रही हैं, दोनों पक्ष सदैव रहे हैं, इसलिए द्वंद्व का प्रश्न है। प्रत्येक व्यक्ति अपने आप एक द्वंद्व के रूप में है, पूरी सृष्टि द्वंद्वात्मक है। इसलिए आप देखेंगे त्रिक जो है बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है कि एक अतिवाद, दूसरा भी अतिवाद, बीच में समन्वय का प्रश्न है। शीत भी है, उष्ण भी है, और बीच में आपके पास वसंत भी है। ये ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश अचानक नहीं बनाए गए हैं, उनके भी त्रिक का प्रश्न है। तो मुझे लगता है कि हर बार उत्तरों को सोचने का प्रश्न उठाता है। प्रश्न चिंतन के लिए बहुत अच्छे हैं, लेकिन हम प्रश्नों में नहीं उलझे जाएं, इसलिए बाद में बातें कुछ उठी हैं कि समाधान क्या होने चाहिए, और समाधान जो भी होता है वो सदैव के लिए नहीं हो सकता है। समाधान अपनी सीमाओं से जुड़ा हुआ होता है। प्रश्न सनातन रहता है, हम कैसे रहें, कैसे जिएं, लेकिन उत्तर तो संदर्भों पर निर्भर होता है। मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारी चीजें समाज में मूल रूप में नहीं बदलती हैं, केवल व्यवस्थाओं के रूप में बदला करती हैं। यह ठीक है कि गुरुकुल व्यवस्था एक मान्यता प्राप्त व्यवस्था है, जिसके लिए हम एक 24 घंटे का प्रश्न उठाते हैं कि बच्चा उनके सामने रहता है, परंतु क्या उसे आज का जो स्वरूप है उसमें लाया जा सकता है? अगर लाया जाता है, मैं बहुत सारे गुरुकुलों को जानता हूँ और वास्तविक स्थिति क्या है वो भी मैं अंदर से पहचानता हूँ। वो गुरुकुल पढ़ाने के लिए नहीं खुले, अपने आश्रमों को चलाने के लिए खुले हैं। वह भी अपने आप में एक महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु उठता है। सरकारें जो आती हैं वो आपको समाधान नहीं देती है, समाधान खोजने के लिए तैयार करवाती है। और हर स्थान कोई लीजिए, कोई भी पक्ष ले लीजिए, समय के साथ साथ उसमें घिसावट भी हुआ करती है। सदैव वस्तु, ये प्रकृति का नियम है। हम अपने शरीर को देख ले, क्या स्वरूप था और क्या बन गए। आप पौधों को देख लीजिए, क्या था और किस रूप में बन गए। तो ये सदैव समान सनातन उत्तर होंगे, यह भी नहीं हो सकता है। बीच में प्रश्न आया था NOIS का, उसका अपना एक विशिष्ट स्थान है। वो क्यों खोला, हमें उसके दर्शन पर जाना चाहिए। हम उस दर्शन को अपना नहीं पाए। उसने साफ किया कि भाई आपको जिस प्रकार से कुछ बहुत सारे बच्चे हैं जो शिक्षा व्यवस्था से बाहर रह गए हैं, अब करिकुलम बनाना सरकार का काम नहीं है, सरकार के द्वारा नहीं, तो लोगों का कार्य है। वे अगर नहीं करेंगे तो कौन क्या करेगा। ऐसे ही महाविद्यालयों का भी प्रश्न है। तो हम सोचते हैं कि सब चीजें हमें बनी बनाई मिलेंगी। मुझे लगता है कि वो चीजें नहीं हो सकती हैं। हमें स्वयं का चिंतन करना पड़ता है। आपको पुस्तक लिखने के लिए न जाने कितने स्थानों पर जाना पड़ता है आंकड़े, लेकिन हम कहें कि उसने संपूर्णता ली, ये नहीं हो सकता, क्योंकि बहुत से ऐसे संदर्भ भी आए होंगे जो हमने नहीं देखे, क्योंकि मेरे भी देखने की अपनी सीमाएं हो सकती है। मैं कितनी दूरी तक देख सकता हूँ, उसके आगे क्या है, तो मेरा तो उत्तर समता जितना देखते हैं वहीं तक सीमित हो जाएगा। उसके पीछे वाले का क्या स्वरूप है, हो सकता है वो बिंदु पता लगता संपूर्ण धारा ही विपरीत हो सकती थी। तो मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारे प्रश्न ऐसे हैं जो आपकी पुस्तकों ने चिंतन के लिए दिए हैं। मैं इन्हें प्रश्नों के उत्तर नहीं दिए जा सकते। प्रश्न चिंतन की धाराएं देती हैं। बहुत से प्रश्न इन पुस्तकों में आए हैं, विशेष रूप से जो हमारे जो बच्चे आपके और संस्कार किसके, मैंने प्रारंभ भी किया था, संस्कार शब्द सामान्य शब्द नहीं है। संस्कार के भी अर्थ ऋग्वेद की परंपरा से लेकर अब तक बदलते रहे हैं। मूल बात वही है कि जो समस्या है उसका समाधान कैसे, इसलिए समकृत के रूप में है, क्रिय के अर्थ में है। युग बदलेगा तो स्थितियां बदलती हैं, स्थितियां बदलती हैं तो रूप भी बदलते हैं। मैं प्रायः एक छोटी सी कविता कहा करता हूं, मैं फिर इस संदर्भ में कह रहा हूं, उत्तर सनातन नहीं हो सकते, कि जो गीत मैंने पिछले साल सुनाया था मेरे मीत, आज फिर सुना रहा हूं। जो गीत पिछले साल सुनाया था मेरे मीत, आज फिर सुना रहा हूं। इस गीत के शब्द वही हैं, इस गीत के बोल वही हैं। इस गीत के शब्द वही हैं, इस गीत के बोल वही हैं, पर गीत के अर्थ बदल गए हैं, पर गीत के अर्थ बदल गए हैं, क्योंकि तुम्हारे और मेरे संदर्भ बदल गए हैं। इस गीत के छंद वही हैं, इस गीत के बंध वही हैं। इस गीत के छंद वही हैं, इस गीत के बंध वही हैं, पर गीत के राग बदल गए हैं, क्योंकि तुम्हारे और मेरे भाव बदल गए। तो मुझे लगता है शब्दों की भी एक यात्रा होती है। शब्द भी अपने आप समय के साथ नए रूप लेते हैं, और हर पुस्तक एक समय के लिए सनातन होती है, मानी जाती है, लेकिन सनातन कभी नहीं होती, क्योंकि संदर्भ सदैव पुराने आए हुए होते हैं। और पुराने को सनातन में कैसे रूप में ढालना है, वो हमारे लिए एक महत्वपूर्ण कार्य हो जाता है। हम दिखाई तो देते हैं कि हम वर्तमान काल में जी रहे हैं, वर्तमान काल में शरीर दिखाई दे रहा है, लेकिन मेरे जो विचार हैं, न जाने कब से हमने बार बार भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा की बात की, तो उन पुस्तकों के माध्यम से कितने विचार मुझ में अब तक आ चुके हैं। तो वैचारिक दृष्टि से मैं आधुनिक नहीं माना जा सकता हूं। और मुझे लगता है कि आधुनिक और प्राचीन में भेद बिना किसी बात के खड़ा किया गया है। भोजन हर युग में चाहिए, औषधि हर युग में चाहिए, शरीर का विकास हर युग में चाहिए, स्वास्थ्य हर युग में चाहिए। अंतर पड़ता है उस समय का स्वरूप क्या था, तो कौन सी वस्तुएं थी जो मेरे लिए उपलब्ध हैं। औषधियां अब भी वही हैं, पहले जड़ी बूटियां थी, अब उन्हीं के रस से सुखाकर कैप्सूल बना दिए गए हैं। मौलिक परिवर्तन नहीं हुआ करते हैं, मौलिकता वही रहती है। तो मुझे लगता है इस प्रकार के ये जो पुस्तकें हैं, ये अपने आप में मैं इनको मौलिक इस रूप में मानता हूं कि इन्होंने उन प्रश्नों को खड़ा किया है जो उपनिषदों ने प्रश्न खड़े किए थे। उस दृष्टि से पुस्तकों की तरोताजगी भी होती है, लेकिन हर पुस्तक अपने इतिहास का पुलिंदा भी होती है। तो मुझे लगता है कि दोनों बातें दिखाई देती हैं। अब कठिनाई ये हो गई है कि भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा की चर्चा तो सभी कर रहे हैं, लेकिन भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा की शब्दावली से परिचित नहीं हो पाए। हम बात तो भारतीय भाषाओं की करते हैं, लेकिन भारतीय भाषाओं का हम उपयोग करने में संकोच करते हैं। कुछ भी कारण उसके हो सकते हैं। अष्टाध्यायी का भी अपना एक स्वरूप है, लेकिन अष्टाध्यायी के पढ़ने का जो स्वरूप तब था, अब के विद्यार्थी को जिसके हाथ में मोबाइल आ चुका है, आप नहीं ला सकते। वो एकाग्रता कहां से लेकर आएगा? उसके लिए जो समर्पण चाहिए, तो वो समर्पण माता पिता के पास नहीं। मुझे लगता है आज जो समस्या है वो माता पिता की अधिक है। बड़ा अच्छा प्रश्न है माँ का जो प्रश्न उठाया गया था, माता पिता की है। माता पिता उतने सजग नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, क्योंकि हर किसी को बंगला चाहिए, हर किसी को कार चाहिए, हर वो सब होता है, तो उसमें उनका ध्यान अधिक है। बच्चे तो पल जाते हैं। यह भावना जब घर कर जाती है तो मुझे लगता है समस्याएं खड़ी होती हैं। आज के युग में ये भाव कहीं घर कर गया है, बच्चे आए हैं तो पल भी जाएंगे। मुझे लगता है वहां कहीं ना कहीं परिवर्तन का प्रश्न उठाना पड़ता है। इनके सनातन उत्तर खोजने का प्रश्न मुख्य रूप से मैंने कहा सनातन नहीं हो सकता है, क्योंकि परिवर्तन ऊपरी तौर पर जो है तो आपके चिंतन को भी प्रभावित करता है। ऐसे बहुत सारी बातें आपने अपने व्याख्यान में कहने का प्रयास किया, और विशेष रूप से आपने एक मुख्य जिस पर बहुत समय गया वो यौन शिक्षा से संबंधित था। संभवतः आपके हृदय की टीस होगी। एक इक्वलिटी और इक्विटी का प्रश्न भी आया था। मुझे लगता है दोनों आगे भी आ सकते हैं, पीछे भी आ सकते हैं। इक्विटी अपने आप में सिद्धांत है, इक्वलिटी उसका परिणाम है। डॉक्ट्राइन ऑफ इक्विटी का इसलिए हम प्रश्न उठाते हैं। तो मुझे लगता है ये एक बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण प्रश्न, बहुत सारे इस इन बिंदुओं को भी आपने लिया, शब्दों को भी लिया। उस शब्द हमारे लिए चिंतन की सामग्री बनेंगे, ऐसा मैं मानकर चलता हूँ। इतनी बात कहकर मैं आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ। आप सबके धैर्य के लिए भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूँ। आपने NIOS का प्रश्न उठाया था। माननीय सरोजी NIOS की चेयरपर्सन थी।
अभी कंकड़ भी तो डालने से हलचल होती है, तो वो प्रयास तो करना चाहिए। एंड आई ऑलवेज, अगर आगे और कोई शब्द बोल दूं, हम सभी की जिम्मेदारी है। व्हेन अ टीचर गोज इन द क्लास, और अगर वो कहे हरक्यूलियन टास्क, हरकुलस आप में से कितने लोग जानते हैं? बड़े बड़े प्रबुद्ध लोग भी नहीं जानते कि हरकुलस कौन था, क्या टास्क था, जिसका साहित्य में और रुचि होगी। अगर हम भागीरथ प्रयास बोले तो हमारा इतिहास, हमारे मूल्य, हमारा ज्योग्राफी जो है कैसे हिमालय से निकली और गंगा सागर तक मिलती है, तो हम लोगों का, पेरेंट्स का और टीचर्स का ज्यादा योगदान है। और कंकड़ तो फेंकने चाहिए, तभी लहरें। और सिर्फ और बच्चों की भाषा में, सरल भाषा में और थोड़े से उदाहरणों से अगर हम शुरुआत करें तो मेरे ख्याल से हम कर सकते हैं। बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स करके ना।
आपका परिचय क्योंकि सबको, सबके लिए अनिवार्य था। हाँ जी,
सुशील कुमार शर्मा, आचार्य अंग्रेजी विभाग, इलाहाबाद विश्वविद्यालय, और आर्टिकल इन भारतीय भाषा समिति।
धन्यवाद। गिरधर जी हमारे साथ हैं, आर्य भाषा समिति से हैं, संस्कृत के महोदय। तो संस्कृत से विद्वान अस्ति पुनः श्रृंगेर गुरुवायूरतः अत्र आगतवान् CSU। और जितने भी ऑनलाइन पर हमारे साथ हमारी बातों से जुड़े हुए हैं, मैं मानता हूं कि उन्हें बहुत कुछ कहना होगा, लेकिन समय को ध्यान में रखते हुए हम इसे यहीं समाप्त कर रहे हैं। आप सबकी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। पाठक जी ने विशेष रूप से प्रश्न किया। वीरेंद्र जी धन्यवाद आपका। अब मैं ये औपचारिक धन्यवाद के लिए
धन्यवाद। वास्तविक रूप में विजया जी का जो बुक, राजीव जी का जो रिसर्च, इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन, जो पहले 30 साल से ये कर रहे हैं, मेरा एक प्रश्न था, ये काम क्यों हमारा, ये प्रश्न अल्टीमेटली प्रश्न सही होगा तो उत्तर तो जैसा गुरुजी ने बोला बदलता रहता है, बट द क्वेश्चन शुड बी अप्रोप्रिएट। जिन विषयों पे इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन इतना गगन काम रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, ये क्यों हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज में क्यों नहीं उत्पन्न हुआ? ये क्यों एक फेल्ड स्टूडेंट, रादर फेल्ड स्टूडेंट का मतलब है जो करना चाहता था वो नहीं कर पाया, वो क्यों उसको बीच में छोड़ दिया? उसको उत्तर खोजने में क्यों उन लोगों को जाने के लिए क्या रोकता है? हमारा सिस्टम में कहां कमियां है? ये देखने में संस्कृत प्रमोशन फाउंडेशन में आने के बाद मेरे को इतना समझ में आया, decolonization of education is very important. We are still ruled by British in brown skin. वो जुडिशियरी हो, पॉलिटिक्स हो, एजुकेशन हो, तो इस विषय पे ये इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन स्वबोधक, शत्रुबोधक, स्वबोधक, मित्रबोधक, ये पूरा फिर वापस आने के लिए हमारा वास्तविकता क्या है उसके बारे में बहुत काम कर रहे हैं। मैं इतना तो निवेदन करूंगा इस संदर्भ में, कुछ रिसर्च, इन्फिनिटी फाउंडेशन का कुछ रिसर्च हमारे संस्कृत प्रमोशन फाउंडेशन के द्वारा भी होने का मौका हमको मिलना चाहिए। वी विल बी वेरी ईगर टू कोलैबोरेट on the education, because we have a great authority on education who is actually consulting all the big institutions in the country. So it will be a great opportunity for us to collaborate with Infinity Foundation. With these words, Shanti Mantrena Samapayamaha. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।